McShin Foundation is Virginia's leading peer-to-peer recovery organization. If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, let us get you connected. We can help you build a solid foundation through recovery. Here at the McShin Foundation, we are committed to healing families and saving lives.
Let me get this thing on here. Okay. Hi. All right. The last time I was here speaking, well, there's twice before that. We were having my son's service in here. So this is surreal for me. Today, I want to talk to you about two dualistic opposing forces. And that's separation and connection. And I want you to keep, oh, yeah, sure. All right, let's see, hold on. Sorry, guys, let's see. Good? All right, cool. All right, yeah, so these two dualistic opposing forces are separation and connection. And I want you to keep these two in mind during this talk, okay? 4 years ago, my son died of a drug overdose. And this happened 6 weeks after he came home from a 5-year prison sentence. Now, Trey went to a good school. He had plenty of friends. We lived in a sought-after neighborhood, and he started college at 16 years old. He spent his childhood like playing sports and volunteering in the community, and he was a confidant for many of his friends because he really cared about people. Everybody had high expectations for his life, which looked nothing like what he would go on to experience. Everybody said, this wasn't supposed to happen to kids like him. When Trey was 18 years old, he was convicted of a crime that he didn't commit. And his public defender told us that the jury would not be that of his peers. And therefore, he figured that Trey had about a 50-50 chance of spending 25 years in prison. But if he pleaded guilty, then the plea deal would shorten that time to 5 years. Well, we had an impossible decision to make. So while Trey was in prison, he stayed very busy serving people. He served as a litigator for inmates who received charges inside, and he pulled together volunteers to start baseball teams and to rebuild the volleyball court. He taught people how to read. He met men who would spend the rest of their lives in prison, and that gave him a profound sense of gratitude for his own situation. And that's because he found connection while he was there. He really understood the inmates and how they got in there, like what happened to them, how they ended up in the system. And that allowed him to grow his compassion on a tremendous level. And that is how he found his purpose during those years. He stayed positive, even in the midst of what he described as daily emotional violence. Whew, yeah. And right before he came home, he actually admitted to me that he was afraid to come home. He said, "Mom, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to come home. Before I got here, I was just a normal kid. And in here, I'm a genius. When I come out, I'm just a felon without an education." My heart sank. Emotional violence breeds shame, and he was caught in a shame cycle. And since then, I've been thinking a lot about shame. And I've created an acronym that describes the internal state of shame. And that is, self-hatred attracts malignant epilogues. So essentially, when you don't love yourself, you attract toxicity and destruction. And since you're the creator of your reality, the way you see yourself dictates all of your experiences in the world that you experience in your external world. And when we experience shame, it means that we feel that something is fundamentally flawed within us. It's not that we did something bad, it's that we are bad. And then we reject certain parts of ourselves. But that's only after the sting of rejection by others. I tried to calm his fears by reminding him how amazing he was and that he had a solid support system back home, and also how much he was loved. And so when he came home, we were optimistic. His friends flocked to him, and he got a job and a car within one day. We were really excited about that. And he planned on starting college in the next semester. But all the goodness in his life wasn't enough to pull him out of that shame cycle. He dreamed about prison every night. And he was on probation, so he wasn't allowed to travel to all the places that he had dreamed of visiting. He was still imprisoned, just not behind bars. And he was reminded every single day that his status in the community was at the very bottom. And this is how the systems we have in place create separation. What systems am I talking about? I'm talking about the school system, for one. It was designed to support the Industrial Revolution and groom factory workers to work as many hours as efficiently as possible. And that concept is still in place. And then we have the corporate system. And over time, corporations have transformed from doing good for the people into toxic environments who are doing nothing more than creating wealth for a small group of people. And we work to keep those systems intact. And corporations cannot support the people who work for it because its primary focus is stakeholder supremacy. And that has become law. And the justice system. It's the oldest system that we have in the industrial world, and it's the foundation for all of the other systems. And its primary function is to create separation through punishment, and it steals our conflicts from us. And all these systems bleed into one another. Just look at corporatized prisons and the school-to-prison pipeline. They are all enforced by shame. And they encourage us to serve our own self-interest without regard for how it impacts anyone or anything else. It's a system's failure on the grandest scale. Separation is the root cause for every single problem we have in the world. Family feuds, divorce, world hunger, addiction, literally all forms of harm. And more people are experiencing heightened levels of loneliness. And that creates war. That's when we feel separate from other people, that's what we're doing. I also created an acronym that describes the external outcome of shame from a systems perspective. And that is separating humanity actualizes mindless enslavement. Think about that. Separating humanity actualizes mindless enslavement. Essentially, separation creates the opening for slavery in many forms. We're never going to be able to fix these broken systems. Instead, we have to dismantle them. And the way to do that is to stop participating in them. My son's life inspired me to do my part to dismantle these broken systems. And I do this by teaching people how to love themselves and how to claim their natural gifts, how to show up authentically, and how to own their conflicts so they can actually heal them. And all this becomes easier to do when you recognize that you're a divine human being who is connected to every other divine being on the planet. We are all beautiful and unique expressions of source consciousness. And quantum physics teaches us that connection is our true reality. And so if we're all connected, our well-being is crucial to the well-being of every other person. That means we have to care about our natural talents, gifts, and abilities, and our purpose on the planet. The way we move out of separation and into connection is through recognizing our shared humanity. And then compassion grows. And compassion leads us to discovering our passions. Think of the word compassion. Come, passion. That's how our purpose finds us. When you heal, you will naturally stop participating in broken systems, and you'll stop perpetuating the shame cycle. But in order to do that, you have to know yourself and you have to love yourself. That's the way to heal. When Trey died, his friends started getting tattoos of the word love in his handwriting, written from the letters that he wrote in prison. I have one now too. Today, lots of people have this tattoo, even people who never received letters from him and people who didn't even know him very well. This beautiful representation of connection was inspired by a young man who spent 5 years in prison and died of an overdose. And I want to leave you with this. The fact that you even exist means that you are a divine badass. That means you have natural gifts to give to the world. But in order to do this, you have to understand that we're all connected. You're a beautiful and unique person who is connected to everyone and everything. Thank you.